Guillotines?
So ultimately speaking, we have a lot of moves in the game that are, I mean, they're two halves of the same coin. Americana versus Kimura. Okay? Upper shoulder lock versus lower shoulder lock. Anaconda and Darce, again, two halves of the same coin. And in most cases, you can kind of flick back and forth between the two. Both start from that front headlock. The only difference is, in one, the hands lock by the side of the neck, and in the other, the hands lock on the back of the armpit. But, I mean, it's literally, you know, which way do your hands lumberjack when they go from one side to the other? Take it. So between the two, go turtle. Between the two, Darce tends to be the more reliable choke. But, as I find, when you do a Darce, it's a one-off. I get one chance at it, it's a higher success rate, but I get one shot. And then if it fails, he escapes, and then we're playing in other positions. Anaconda, when I go for Anaconda and I set my choke and he escapes, in a lot of instances, I can get back to the same starting point I was in and then do it again. So even though Anaconda gets hit a little bit less, you're going to find that your ability to go with multiple Anacondas is higher. So again, it's as I step in, one at the head, one at the armpit, and this becomes my control. Anaconda is hands at the armpit. Darce is hands at the head. Other than that, two halves of the same coin. We're going to run them and play them almost identically. So right now, let's do the, let's go Darce. So again, hand at the armpit, hand at the head. Right here, going to be very difficult for me to get Dave into a Darce choke from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break him down. So I'm going to step to the side so I can change my angle. When I change my angle, my hands can slip and I go gable grip and I put my forearm into the back of his head. So that now from here, as I pry his head down and lift my right elbow at the same time, okay, I can force him by putting a neck crank, a legal neck crank. I can force him to fall to his side. Now what I don't want to do is when he falls, okay, I was here. I don't want to be here in that north-south. When he falls, I want to be here. I want to be facing his back. I don't want to be facing his hips. If I'm facing his back, then we're creating this little L, okay? And if I'm facing his hips, then that means that we're just in a straight line. Because my job now, and this is where I struggle, okay? Some of the guys, Parsa probably not so much, Dave probably struggles as hard as I do. It's an arm issue at this point in time. When he's got bigger shoulders and neck, you got to get around it. And when you've got shorter or thicker arms, I have to get my arms to dig around all of that as well. Okay? So once I'm in, my hands were in the back of his neck. So what I'm going to do through here is I'm going to take that upper arm. I'm going to crunch his head in as tight as I can. Now my hands are going to release. My right hand is still pushing on the back of his head, and I'm going to shove to get my hand in literally as deep as possible. Then I'm going to come in, grab my own bicep, walk my hand up his back, itsy bitsy spider. Okay, when you bring it up, there's my tension. Okay, that's when the choke begins. Now walk your hand up even higher, and now the choke is actually setting in even deeper. So when you first pull the hand up, that is just taking the slack out. And then when you walk it up just a little bit more, that's when the choke is actually closing. Okay? So like I said, when I'm here and I go like this is good. But then this little bit, because notice from here, when my hand comes up, the first slack is when my forearm hits my wrist. Now watch what happens when my hand goes up just a little bit more. Notice when this now is able to lift up, it takes my wrist with it and actually pushes the wrist up deeper into his neck to get a better choke. Okay? Now what we say is, where's the real power come from on almost all of the choke series? Do you remember? Do you remember?
Hip to hip.
Hip to hip. Okay? When I lock in my arms, that's good. When I connect hip to hip, it's great. Okay, so right here, can I choke him right now? Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. And right now, but a lot of it has to do simply with the fact that he's not fighting me. He's not fighting me. So again, if I have to struggle right now and he's not fighting me, how hard do I have to struggle when he is fighting me? So when he's not fighting, this is when your technique should not feel like you're struggling. It should feel like you're just kind of like putting it in place and he taps out. Okay? So go all the way through. So I start from that front. I'm going to turn to the side, because again, if ever you're struggling, it's almost always the angle. My hands come up, karate chop the back of his neck, and lock your gables. Okay? Push his head down. It's like a baseball choke. Push his head down and lift on the right elbow. That's going to create the rotation. From here, again, change your angle. Shove your hand as deep as possible. Push his head into you so that when I lock my bicep, okay, I want his head crunched in. Hand comes up, then itsy bitsy spider to get a little bit more. I'm going to take a little tension off because I already know it's choking Dave pretty good. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push into him a little bit. I'm going to hop up and I'm going to throw my foot over his legs. Okay. Now from here, I'm going to start to make my squeeze. Okay, and the squeeze is pinching this elbow in and lifting this elbow up. It's not like this. Pinch his head down and lift this elbow up. We call it cradle the baby. Okay, so from here, but we're only going to cradle it one time. Elbow in, lift up. I've hooked his leg. So now as I'm here, now I'm going to slide my knee, touch his belly button, and lay to my side. Okay. And then my lat is literally leaning on the side of his head, putting in the last crunch. And that's when the power tap happens. Before, they're like, I'm waiting. When you slide it in, that's when all of a sudden it's like when you tapping, because it felt like you were hitting me. Like, yeah, right. That's when the power tap happens. Yep. All right, let's go back and forth. 1, 2, 3.